scientist injected a man with snake genes as part of a secret experiment. At first, the man's skin began shedding like a snake's. The scientist brushed it off, claiming it was just a normal side effect of the vaccine. But a few days later, his face started turning blue. Shiny scales began covering his body, and he slowly transformed from a human into a snake-like creature. The scientist believed his experiment had worked. Then, without warning, the transformation stopped. The man was left trapped as a horrifying half-human, half-snake hybrid. Since the experiment had failed, the scientist secretly got rid of him. When the man's family reported him missing, the police questioned the scientist. He lied, claiming his assistant had simply quit his job. He even gave the officers a tour of his laboratory, but they found no evidence. The truth was far darker. The scientist had sold the half-human creature to a traveling circus. People paid to take pictures with him, believing he was just wearing an elaborate costume. The poor man desperately wanted to ask for help, but instead of words, only hissing sounds came from his mouth. Still obsessed with perfecting his experiment, the scientist searched for another test subject. He offered a professor an enormous payment worth millions of dollars to help recruit someone. The professor sent one of his own students, Jess. Jess had loved snakes ever since he was a child, so he gladly accepted the job as the scientist's assistant without suspecting anything. Inside the secret laboratory, Jess met the scientist's daughter, Lisa. As they spent more time together, they gradually fell in love. One day, the scientist warned Jess that the lab housed highly venomous snakes. He said everyone had to receive a protective vaccine for safety. Jess had no idea that the injection marked the beginning of another horrifying experiment. That night, he became extremely tired and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, he appeared completely normal and continued working as usual. Meanwhile, the scientist's experiment was progressing exactly as planned. One day, Jess and Lisa visited the same circus where the half-human, half-snake creature was being displayed. Lisa assumed it was simply a performer in costume. When the scientist learned they had gone there, he immediately forbade them from ever returning. That was the moment Lisa began to suspect her father was hiding something. A few days later, she heard rumors that the snake man at the circus was actually real. That night, she secretly sneaked inside. Suddenly, the lights came on. Standing before her was the terrifying half-human, half-snake creature. She realized he was her father's former assistant. In that instant, Lisa understood that Jess had become the next victim of her father's experiment. She raced back to the laboratory, but she was already too late. The scientist's latest experiment had finally succeeded. Jess had transformed into a gigantic snake. By the time Lisa entered the lab, the scientist was already dead. Soon afterward, the police arrived and searched the entire facility. But Jess was nowhere to be found. He had mysteriously disappeared without leaving a single trace. Follow us for more epic fantasy stories like this one.